My sex drive just disappeared. I remember I was reading one of those historical smut Outlander books. I knew I should be turned on, but it wouldn't take, like a gear spinning in my head with nothing attached. That's when I decided to switch pills. I had been on Hirsutaline, an over-the-counter anger suppressant, for 2 years. In college, I used to spend too much time online, getting into arguments, trashing product reviews, disliking, downvoting, detweeting, classic aggression complex stuff. After college, I moved to the city, where I began to hate all people and most animals. I'd spend nights on comment threads, warping the hell out of my anger lobes. I started the pill after a few weeks of homicidal ideation had finally scared me. Life wasn't that aggravating. I was, on paper, very content. I had a good job in Manhattan, my own apartment, spare time. 3 weeks into taking the pill, it seemed to click, and I had my first sense of calm in as long as I could remember. It was like struggling to swim, and right when you need it, discovering how to float. You don't realize until you stop treading water how exhausting it was. Hirsutaline fixed all that, until it fixed too much. I like being in control of my emotions, but at the end of the day, I guess I'd rather be a horny wreck than a numb success. I made a doctor's appointment. That's very common, Dr. Searle droned, thwapping her index finger on my solar plexus. She tugged down on my earlobe and looked inside. Especially with your dosage, 100 milligrams? Yeah, at that level it starts to fuck with you. She lifted up my arm, stared into my armpit for 5 long seconds, and frowned. Why was I on that high a dose? I don't know. She shrugged. She took my hand and squinted under my fingernails. After some back and forth, we decided on a new pill. Duolazine, not a suppressant, but a synthetic anti-anger supplement. New drug. Just hit the market. That sounds great, I said. When do I start? Oh, honey, she sighed. Hold your horses. You're a long way from that. She explained I had to slowly ease down my Hirsutaline dose. Mixing the two had been known to lead to unplanned self-immolation. Starting tomorrow, she monotoned, eyes on her watch as she pinched the bridge of my nose. Reduce your dose to 75 milligrams. The next day, instead of one 100-milligram pill, I took 3 25-milligram pills. I didn't think anything of it. I got on the train and went to work. I worked at a cosmetics company in Midtown. From the moment I arrived, I felt nauseous. I had felt something similar when I started the pill, so I ignored it. Spray Teen, our neediest client, was in for a meeting, and it fucked my whole day. Instead of a 45-minute lunch, I took 15. I ran into the break room, unwrapped the sandwich I packed at home, and took a bite. Then a terrible sensation stopped me. For an unbearable moment, I was positive I had just inhaled a spider. Something firm and pointy itched at the back of my throat. I spat out my bite, shrieking and clawing at my tongue, but there was nothing in the chunk of soggy PB&J. I twisted my tongue around and felt the pointy mass again. It wasn't moving. I spat and spat, but whatever it was wouldn't dislodge. I drank water, tried to choke it down, but that didn't work either. What the fuck? I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and opened my mouth before the mirror. Tilting my head just right, I could see something catch the light. Almost invisible, thin and shiny. I twisted my fingers in my mouth to grasp it. I caught a hold and tugged, but it slipped away. I grabbed again, but it wouldn't give. It was caught. My hands slick with my own spit, I grabbed hard and yanked like pulling a weed. It hurt. What came out was a 6-inch long wire of silver hair. It was thicker than my normal hair, almost metallic. Most curious of all was the root. It was thick and oddly juicy, like a pomegranate seed. I went back to my lunch. The next bite was fine, same with the next 3. But by the time I took another drink, I could swear I felt another hair. I full-on screamed. The entire 8th floor must have heard. I reached into my mouth blind. I felt the hair and ripped. This time it wasn't 1 hair, but 3. The roots were specked in blood. In the time it took to walk back to my desk, I could already feel new hairs irritating hidden inches of my tongue. The next morning, I took my 3 pills, and by lunch that day, my mouth was full and every breath itched. The angular follicles crept out like spider legs no matter how I closed my lips. I had to squat under my desk with a makeup compact and a pair of scissors after I trimmed the inside of my mouth, probably swallowing most of the hair for God's sake. I told my manager I needed a personal day. He scoffed and said,
"Nuh-uh, Missy. If you get a day, I should get a week."
I don't recall yelling, but all of a sudden my mouth was open and everyone was watching with their hands over their lips, and I heard the words, "Fucking try me!" burst through the hair in my mouth. At home, I emailed my doctor and described the symptoms of my sudden mouth bush. I received a call in 15 minutes. "You need to go back to 100 milligrams, the doctor told me, before hello even. "What?" I asked. "Your pill. It's not a common side effect, but it does occur, a subdermal hair generation. We just need to slow down is all." The next 4 weeks, I alternated every day between 100 milligrams and 75 milligrams. The hair stopped growing so relentlessly, I learned to pluck it. In 4 weeks, I dropped down to 75 milligrams for another 4 weeks, then 75 alternating with 50 for another 4, 50 for 4, then on and on like that until I was off. 32 weeks, I calculated, more than half a year, just so I could feel horny again. I thought about this every morning as I yanked the hair growing from my esophagus. Without my old dosage, I began to notice my anger flaring up occasionally, the uncontrollable urge to exact punishment or revenge on strangers. I didn't like this. But what could I really do? If I stopped the pill entirely, the shock could kill me. If I went back to 100 milligrams, the last 2 months would have been for nothing. Yet I knew it would only get worse. For the first time since high school, I started smoking pot. I bought an eighth off my cousin, Purple Granddad. Just a little Granddad before work to keep me calm, then a little before bed to stifle dream violence. Though this quickly solved my problem, for some reason it caused me more ethical discomfort than the pill. It felt more like a drug somehow, but it got me through. After 28 weeks, I finally spent a single week with no pill whatsoever. It was supposed to be 4 weeks, but Christ, there was a reason I needed the pill. That was when I had my aggressive episode. On Thursday afternoon, the UPS guy came by my work. I had bought a spice grinder online and shipped it to the office. The email said it was coming today, but the UPS guy didn't have it. "What the fuck do you mean it's missing?" I screamed. The angry part of me feels like the most legitimate part. Whenever it takes over, it's as though it has to prove the point, stir up shit. The guy tried to answer, and that was when I felt the hair tickle the back of my throat. I slapped him in front of all my coworkers. Bethany from HR tried to step in. "Cool it, Missy." Well, I don't know for sure, but I might have shouted something like, "I will murder you!" And that's how I lost my job. I spent the rest of the day screaming on my phone with my parents, then screaming over an email to my doctor. I said fuck it to the next 3 weeks without a pill. The next morning, I started 30 milligrams of duolazine. I woke up at 10:30 on Monday morning and felt lost. I had nowhere to go. It was the 3rd day of duolazine, and I had yet to notice any mood change. The hair had stopped growing in my throat, though. I had gotten pretty high the last couple nights and decided it was a fine way to celebrate my first Monday of unemployment. I had a little one-hitter painted to look like a cigarette. I crammed a little pebble of green into the end, sparked up, and felt oddly giddy. I wondered if I even needed the duolazine. Weed seemed to work well enough. Still, I went ahead and took my 30 milligrams. Later that day, I felt restless. My legs were itchy and my eyes kept watering. I wanted to move. I wanted out of the house. I needed company and love and duty. I figured it was phantom pangs of my old job and responsibilities. Yes, I wanted to work, but oddly, I did not want to be paid. Later, in a duolazine commercial, I'd hear it phrased as an irrepressible urge to volunteer. All I knew was what I felt. I needed to help my fellow man, or so help me, I would start a fire. I Googled city charities, sniffing out food kitchens and soup lines. If I hurried, I could help make sandwiches in Far Rockaway. I took a cab with money I didn't have to do work I wouldn't get paid for, and I was so excited I was drooling. In 2 hours, I was draped in an unwashed apron. Men and women, mostly men though, passed by in a line, taking sandwiches with hardly a glance. Part of me pitied these unfortunates, wanted to help and love and care. Another part of me was fucking livid. Look at this fucker here, I thought of a homeless child, holding up the line. "Grab a bag or fucking move," I shouted. Later, I kissed an elderly woman's hand who thanked me so sweetly, and seconds later threw a roast beef at an old man who winked at me. I hit him in the eye. I went home, packed the one-hitter 3 times, and sent a simultaneously rude and grateful email to my doctor beginning, "Thank you so much for the help, but you fucked up." The next morning, I woke up at 11 to an email from the doctor. It was a link to a WebMD article titled Anger and Anti-Anger. I spent the next half hour reading. Unlike Hirsutaline, which suppressed anger, as well as physiological anger analogs like hair growth, duolazine combated it with an anti-anger supplement. Anti-anger, a sense of chemical charity. Apparently, just because I was supplementing anti-anger didn't mean it canceled out the anger. For a few weeks, I'd feel both, like an anger speedball. Fury again took me over. I was supposed to be fixing my problem. This felt so much worse. I threw my phone at my TV and broke both. I didn't stop the pill. However, I did begin to truly miss Hirsutaline. Had it really been that bad? Maybe I had judged it too harshly. Yeah, I couldn't get turned on, but I also still had a job and a TV and a phone. But I had to give duolazine a chance. Otherwise, well, I'd never know. It would haunt me. My life had become a medicinal love triangle. For 2 weeks, I avoided charity work, which was a struggle. I smoked way more weed. In my head, I was terrified I'd become an addict, though going without weed for a day was, well, no problem whatsoever. One morning, I took my duolazine an hour late, and it felt like I almost died. Heart racing, sweating, anger, and love pulsing in sickening tumults. It was only in the 3rd week that the anger and anti-anger chemicals seemed to strike a balance. I can recall the instant. I was walking down Grand Street, and a woman ahead was blocking the path. In aggressive episodes, the way a single person could block an entire sidewalk would get me picturing a bloody, broken body. Now it didn't faze me. It was an old woman with a cane, and though I felt bad for her, I didn't want to help her either. I was fine, just walking slightly slower for a little. I had to stop mid-step, the realization of that prized calm finally here. I almost cried. I noticed then I had stopped in front of a game store. I saw a puzzle in the window. It struck me I hadn't done a puzzle since I was 12. At home, I started my new puzzle, a simple 750-piece jigsaw, cardboard, an image of kittens in a basket waiting to be revealed. In my grateful contentedness, I just did the puzzle and smoked weed until 4 a.m. The next morning, after taking my 30-milligram dose, I went online and bought 2 more puzzles. There's a whole puzzle community, apparently. It seemed remarkable to me that it could have escaped me for so long. I spent all day finishing my one puzzle, then took it apart and started again. I smoked until I got a headache and couldn't get high anymore. I had to do a phone check-in with my doctor to discuss my dosage. I called her while high. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Searle asked. "Better," I told her. "Yeah, I mean, it was scary for a little, but so far things have been more even-keeled. Just been hanging out." "And you aren't supplementing the pill with anything, are you?" My palms turned sweaty. "Well, I have been smoking, marijuana. Cannabis, you know." She was silent, so I kept talking. "It actually seemed to help. I know I shouldn't, but I don't know. A couple toots and a puzzle, and I calm right." That's when the doctor gasped over the earpiece. "Did you say puzzle?" I lost my breath. "Yes." "Listen to me very carefully," she said in utmost urgency. "Stop taking your dosage now." "Why?" "A very small percentage of patients develop a puzzle obsession. It can be debilitating." I got in a huff. Not angry, I didn't feel that anymore, but I knew I was bothered. "Well, what if it's not the pill? What if I just like puzzles?" "You don't. Trust me." She sighed over the phone. "You also shouldn't be using cannabis." She then told me how they didn't know the long-term effects of smoking weed, especially with anger disorders, and I kinda tuned out. For God's sake, duolazine just came out this year. It's not like they knew what that did 5 years down the line. Or maybe they did. In the end, I didn't care. I finally felt okay for the first time in over half a year. I heard my door buzzer. Delivery. "Listen, I need to go," I said. "My puzzles are here." For 2 weeks, I came back to the game store almost every day. It hosted a couple meetups a week, all puzzle heads. I learned about edgeless puzzles, monochromatic puzzles, and the tactile magnificence of wooden jigsaws. I also met Sarah. She came by the shop during the Brooklyn Puzzle Dogs meetup. She stood quietly inside for some of it, but kept leaving to go outside, groaning and stomping every time. She walked down the block to have a very angry conversation on her phone, and I watched her. Her fists were clenched and shaking. She kept coughing, wiping at her mouth. Something sticking out from her lips caught the sun and glowed silver. They looked like spider legs. When the meetup ended, I followed her out. "Hey!" I shouted. I wondered briefly if this was my anti-anger out of whack again. I decided I didn't care. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sarah didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. "Are you coming off Hirsutaline?" Sarah's jaw dropped, and I saw the hair growing within. Her hand promptly covered her mouth, cheeks red. "I went through the same thing earlier this year," I smiled. "Wasn't fun, I can tell you that much." "Do you—" she started, then stopped. She took a deep breath. Do you trim them, or do you—" "Oh, I plucked them. It hurt, but I don't know, you get used to it." "What was yours? What's your condition?" "Hyper-aggression disorder." "I'm depressive-aggressive," she said. Her expression eased. We both smiled. 2 months later, I had a job at the hobby shop, which wasn't too bad. We got health insurance, and the community there, especially with my fellow puzzlers, was intimate, welcome. I was smiling more, laughing, smoking with friends on the weekends. I hadn't thought about pushing anyone in front of the train for over a month. In the end, I couldn't actually tell what was working. Weed had evened me out, perhaps. Maybe the new drug was the trick. Or maybe it was my old job that had been the problem the whole time, and the new job was the solution. Maybe I had been repressing my love of puzzles. I wondered how anyone could declare if a drug really works or not, how a scientist could clear the variables away. When it came down to it, I didn't care. I felt better. I had a community, a job, and now over 200 puzzles. I went to a new puzzle friend's house for a puzzle party. Mostly women, puzzle heads, employees from the store. At some point, they all got excited because Sarah brought up Outlander. There was a new season coming out. We watched the trailer. A man's chest filled the screen, small hairs twirling out of an open blouse, and 6 of the women moaned, then laughed. I felt nothing at all. A gear spun in my head, disconnected. God fucking damn it.